Dermot Kennedy and Kiss Me. You're listening to BBC Radio Leicester. It is 12 minutes past 12. Ben Jackson with you through until 6. Now, I've been itching to introduce our next two guests to you because first off this afternoon, we're going to meet a woman from Leicester and her friend who she met online. They've created a podcast. Alice Evans, who is blind and uses a guide dog Dora, who's sitting very quietly in the background, met Lucy Wood, who's a wheelchair user online, and they became friends and they decided to shine a spotlight effectively on people with disabilities and kind of share their stories. And in fact, in their latest episode, it features the extremely famous Leicester man with a disability, King Richard III. And they recorded the last episode of the podcast at the King Richard III Visitor Centre. Alice and Lucy join us in the studio. Hi guys, how are you?
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
We've just been talking about the fact it's so lovely to have people in the studio. I love it. Every time we have people in the studio, it's like, it's great. It's like having a little party.
We're used to doing all of our recording remotely, so this is actually really nice for us to be in the same room.
Yeah,
we're very rarely together.
It's nice to actually say, is your mic, have you not muted your mic? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, are you on?
Yeah, exactly.
Alice, you got in touch with me and told me a little bit about the podcast. Just tell our audience what the podcast's about.
So the tagline to our podcast is a podcast about disability, illness and difference. We are a podcast who we invite people who identify as disabled or with a chronic illness or health difference on to just talk to us about their lives and the things that are important to them.
And Lucy, the point is it's really open, this, isn't it? Because everybody's experience is entirely different. I mean, it's the whole point is it's individual.
Yeah, it's completely different. And that's the one thing that I think both me and Alice have discovered, and we believe wholeheartedly that it's making us better people in general, because you're kind of learning about other people's experiences, but also we're realising that actually those thoughts that we've had, those feelings that we get about being disabled, we're not the only ones that have it. So it's really sort of making us better disabled people, almost, if you like, to know that you're sort of not alone, and also that you're learning about other people's experiences, and it's sort of opening our eyes to the whole wider disabled community.
Alice, one of the things I thought was lovely, you both met online, and at what point did you realise that A, you had kind of lots in common, and B, really kind of liked each other?
It's quite a funny story, really, of how we met online. It was during lockdown, and Lucy has and still has, I think, actually, a slightly stronger online presence. And I'd been following her on Twitter as a bit of a sort of fangirl. And she put a tweet out just saying she was thinking about starting a podcast. And for weeks, this was during lockdown, I'd been saying to my husband, I'd really like to do a podcast. And I had told him about this tweet I'd seen. He said, why don't you go do a podcast with that woman? And you'll stop talking to me about it. So I just sent her a message and said, I'm interested in this. Do you want to have a bit of a chat? And I think
our first Skype call was about an hour, wasn't it? We'd scheduled it in for like 25 minutes, and it was an hour. And it was just like, oh well, I really like history. Well, I really like history, and I'm really interested about talking to disabled people. Well, I want to, and that's how it sort of formed itself, and then it just sort of snowballed. And now it's like a small child that sits in a corner growling at us if we don't pay it enough attention.
You have a big commitment to this, don't you? I think is it every 2 weeks you drop one?
Yeah, fortnightly. Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
Yes, we're really fortunate. We have a really fabulous team behind us. We are entirely self-funded. So our editor, God bless his heart, actually has a full-time job and then does all of our editing on top of his full-time job. And within our first 3 months of starting, I thought in my infinite wisdom that we could do a spotlight series for Autism Awareness Week, which meant 5 episodes coming out over 5 consecutive days.
It nearly killed us.
I think I very nearly lost friends over that one.
We said never again, didn't we? Never again.
So, but it is a big commitment, and I think that's one of the things that's really helped our friendship, kind of over the last nearly 2 years, is that we're just constantly back and forth talking about the next thing that we're planning, organising things, because it is just us kind of running it. So, and
we said, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were talking about, how the friendship element of this podcast is so important, and people, we say we've barely sort of spent we haven't really. If you add it all up together, we've not really spent much time together
Next to each other
in the same room. And people always think, oh, that's quite funny. But actually, it takes a lot of work to build on that friendship. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. It's keeping in contact all the time. But it's so worth it. I mean, it is genuinely one of the best things I've ever done. And I'm not just saying that because it's my microphone and nobody can take it off me. I love it. It's one of the best things I've ever done.
Do you think the process, I mean, it's obvious to everybody listening, just you are incredibly upbeat women. Do you the getting together with the podcast, though, do you think it has changed you? Has it changed your views of yourselves, of other people?
Definitely. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think in terms of my ability to be more open about things that are difficult and that I'm struggling with, that's something that's really come from the show, is from talking to other disabled people. And actually over the years, I think we've only had 2 or 3 other blind, visually impaired people on the show. But it's just talking to people who also have those disabled experiences about what they've experienced, and listening to how other people, how emotionally literate other people can be, how open people can be about things that are difficult, and how that makes them feel. That's helped me, I think, to be more engaged with my own emotional experiences, and also try to be more open and engaged with other people, even outside of the podcast.
I think as well, the people that we have on our show, I think it is incredibly brave of them because they don't know us. We invite them on and they say, yes, I'll come on. And then within sort of half an hour of us doing the rundown of this is how it works. Are you ready? Yes. Within add another 10 minutes onto that, we are proper deep diving into, well, tell us about that experience that may be slightly traumatic or, is very an emotional thing.
I mean, I would say that I kind of I am no expert in podcasts. I only started to make one last week, so it's a kind of a new world for me as well. But the thing about interviewing people and talking to people with a microphone is there is a tacit understanding that it's okay to ask difficult questions. You don't have to answer them.
No,
and that's a massive gift, that, isn't it? To be able to be essentially allowed to be nosy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird thing, but
it is. And but I think I always say to the people that come on, you're incredibly brave to, and we always say to them, if there's anything, if you go away tonight, sleep on it and think, I shouldn't have said that, then tell us and we can, make adjustments. But nobody ever has, have they? They've never really
never
come
had
back
a single
and said,
person.
There's a lot of trust involved there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Alice, I love you. You just dropped in a second or two ago that you both have a thing about history. Is that how you ended up to be recording in the Richard III Visitor Centre?
I mean, more or less. So we.
I think when we started the podcast, we were like, we'd love to go and do a live episode of the Richard III Centre, and Alice was thinking, maybe in a few years.
It's quite funny, really. As the one from Leicester and Leicestershire, I'd never been. Lucy,
I had.
So often people say that. I live in Leicester, but I haven't been. Where's that place?
Lucy had been and has for years been saying, "Oh, it's I loved it there. It's so interesting," and always bringing up Richard III. And I'm sort of going, there are other people. Let's talk about other And then we've been talking about wanting to do something, wanting to take a bit of a step out of where we'd got comfortable over the last 2 years. It seemed almost inevitable when the idea came to me that I was like, this is brilliant. This is absolutely what we should do. And the visitor centre, all credit to them. They were fantastic, incredibly supportive with our access needs, really open.
And basically we said we want to do this, and this. And they were like, yeah, fine. Okay.
Yeah, they are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the kindest people. It's like, can we go and do such and such? Yeah, why are you even asking?
And the expertise of the people that work there is just incredible. We had a couple of people there sort of giving us their historical insight, and really, really impressed with not just their knowledge about Richard III, but their level of knowledge and
their enthusiasm as well. Yeah. I mean, I thought I was enthusiastic. It's off the chart, really. Yeah.
But you see, the thing is, you touch on something that I don't think gets talked about enough. I mean, I've heard it mentioned in the past. I can't say I've ever heard it discussed. This idea of of the disability side of Richard III. We talk about the scoliosis of his back. We talk about the fact that, you know, Shakespeare referred to him as crook-back, and in essence, that kind of medieval mind equated disability with, you know, an evil or dark nature. Those are things that they were used at the time. Heaven only knows what it was like to have a disability in 1485. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. What did you draw out of it, Alice?
I mean, I think the thing that was most interesting to us, kind of to really learn, because, you know, we knew from bits and pieces that we've heard over the years that obviously the depiction of Richard by Shakespeare is not accurate. And so learning, you know, about actually what the likely physical impairment that he had and sort of how that would have presented was really interesting. But I think the thing for all of us, we were joined in our recording by a disabled historian, Daisy Holder, and one of the things that they said to us whilst we were there was that, you know, the biggest thing that all of this makes you think about is this idea that although there's, as you said, you know, this medieval idea that disability is equated to some kind of innate inner darkness, and there are, you know, debates around what Richard may or may not have done during his lifetime and during his reign. But I think the thing that for us as disabled people, the big takeaway is how much actually there is still this element of this is what the world thinks of disabled people. If they don't think that that we're bad because we're sponging off the state, or we're bitter and angry about being disabled, then we're pitiable, and they feel sorry for us.
Lucy?
Yeah, I mean, that was the takeaway that I got. You know, that it's still sort of, it's bled through right to modern day society, really. And I say in the episode we recorded last week, there is an element of me that feels very sorry for Richard III, actually, because I know that if those assumptions were being made about me, we don't know what's true and what's not, because that's what history is. But I know that if those assumptions were being made about me and they were false, I would be really quite aggrieved and upset about it. And it just makes me feel like, you know, there's, for all his misdemeanors, supposed misdemeanors, the two boys in the tower, things like that, there was a lot of good that he did in his 2 years reign. Lots of positives came from his, you know, time on the throne. And I just feel incredibly sorry that, you know, this sort of Shakespeare's depiction of Richard III has bled through to society and
well, and it's interesting you raise it, of course, how much it took to sort of scrape that depiction away of 500 years ago. It stuck, didn't it? If I was going to say, if people want to listen to the podcast, that's a silly way of putting it. When people want to listen to the podcast, because clearly everybody needs to go and listen to it now, where will they find you?
We are available on all good streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where else?
I mean, all the places. Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are on Amazon.
Yes.
So there is, we've made somewhat of a rod for our own back with the name of our podcast.
We need to whiz through.
I was going to say, which you have quite skillfully not mentioned yet.
I thought I'd let you do that.
Yeah.
So we are called the lABLEd podcast. However, one of the things we wanted to do was in pushing back against preconceptions about disability, we wanted to emphasise the able sort of element of the word labelled. So we are spelt lABLEd. So for those of our listeners who use smart speakers or screen readers, I know that it is read out as lABLEd. So that's the best way to search for us, is the lABLEd podcast.
I would just also like to point out that this was Alice's idea to name it this way round. Yeah.
And we are fully invested now. There is no going back, unfortunately.
I don't know how many people have renamed their podcast 2 years in.
So the lABLEd podcast, available on all available streaming services and so on. Listen, will you come in and see us again?
Absolutely. Yeah,
we love having you in. You're an absolute joy. Thank you so much. When's the next one out?
So we had an episode out last Thursday. Next episode will be not this Thursday, coming the one after. And then Richard III episode is out on the 29th of December.
Can't wait. Let's get you in again really soon. It's
Yeah,
lovely to
lovely.
meet you guys. And
Thank
you're
you.
welcome in any time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's 2. You're listening to BBC Radio Leicester. This is Gabrielle.